Donald Trump likes to appear confident. Here are his recent comments about winning over voters who supported Nikki Haley in the primary.
All of those people are going to come to me because first of all, what's their choice? Biden, he's the worst president in the history of our country. There's never been a president so bad. So he's incompetent. So they're all coming to me. We see it already. They're all coming to me.
Okay, fact check, though. Haley might be coming back to haunt Trump. NBC News has confirmed a Wall Street Journal report that she's been meeting with donors and has no current plans to endorse Donald Trump. And we've seen what has happened in key primary states where Haley was on the ballot even after she dropped out. Just this week, Nikki Haley won more than 20% of the vote in Indiana. So it's clear that Trump will need these Haley voters to win in November. So joining me now is Basil Smikle, Democratic strategist and former executive director of the New York State Democratic Party, and former Republican Congressman Carlos. Well, you're still a Republican? Are you, Carlos? Oh, okay. A former Florida congressman, though, from Florida, Carlos Curbelo. Carlos and Basil, thank you so much for being here. Carlos, I'm going to start with you. Trump needs his voters, right? He's the presumptive GOP nominee. It'll probably be a fait accompli, right? So what happens with somebody like Nikki Haley? Does she just then stand silent, like once he becomes the actual GOP nominee?
Well, Nikki Haley has no plans, and the reporting is there, but I also have confirmation from people who are involved in her finance team that she has no plans to get behind Trump, at least not anytime soon. And then, Katie, you mentioned these voters, 20%.
That's wild.
The primary is over. Yeah. Haley is no longer a candidate, and people are going through the trouble of showing up to vote against Donald Trump. That is a problem for him.
Okay, but quickly. There's a difference between saying I'm not going to endorse Donald Trump and I'm not going to vote for Donald Trump, right? I mean, what are you hearing about that, though?
Well, I mean, sure, there's some nuance there, but if she doesn't endorse him, I mean, that's what counts, right? Whoever she decides to vote for, I mean, we may or may not even find out. But if she was a candidate for president and isn't supporting the nominee and is still getting 20% of the vote, that's meaningful. That makes a difference. That could cost him the election. We know how close these elections have been, right?
Yeah, and Basil, to that point from Carlos, right, the Biden and the Trump campaigns are clearly trying to woo these Haley voters. That number when we heard Indiana was jaw-dropping to me, frankly. So who do you think's doing a better job of it so far, though? I mean, is that 20% that we just heard about? Is that really just such a far-off dream for somebody like Joe Biden?
Well, you know, I think Carlos is right in that 20% is important because these are voters that were intentional about making a point to say that they did not want to support Donald Trump. And I do think that this is where the Biden money advantage becomes really important. It is not a fait accompli that these voters will then go out and vote for Joe Biden. He has to go get those votes. He has to convince them to come out. And that's going to take time, and it definitely takes a fair amount of money to sort of hold their hand through this election cycle for the next 6 months. But if I'm Nikki Haley, what I'm doing is looking at whether or not those voters actually do come out in November. Because if the people that voted for me and wanted to send a message still come out and vote, that's actually not a bad platform to start a 2028 campaign for president, especially if she's talking to donors now. Don't know if it'll happen, but, you know, candidates always want to leave their options open. And I think this may be a sign that she's leaving that door open.